You know, my therapist says life is one long cost-benefit analysis.
You need to get a new therapist.
Coming up next, we explore how laughter can be the best medicine as injected through Eureka Day, the puncturing and funny new comedy which pits vaxxers against anti-vaxxers at a progressive and elite California school. Then our panel of experts explores the phenomena of Wicked as the film adaptation of the international musical smash hit continues to defy gravity at the box office. Hello, I'm Patrick Pacheco. Welcome to this episode of Theater All the Moving Parts, which begins with our discussion of the provocative new comedy Eureka Day with playwright Jonathan Spector and actors Bill Irwin and Jessica Hecht. Set at a progressive and elite school in Berkeley, the play skewers the polite and politically correct pretensions of the school's board after a mumps outbreak lays bare divisions over whether to vaccinate or not to vaccinate.
What we'd be saying is, I'm not willing to subject my child to even the tiniest amount of risk so that we can protect people's elderly parents with cancer or a newborn baby sibling. I mean, is that really the kind of community you want to be a part of?
With over 20 Broadway shows between them, Tony Award winner Irwin and Tony nominee Hecht lead the cast of a play seemingly ripped from the headlines. Irwin is Don, a compassionate, if flummoxed, leader trying to navigate the contentiousness of his board, while Hecht plays Suzanne, a wealthy and devoted mother of 5 who speaks softly and carries a big stick. Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Jessica. And welcome, Jonathan. Joining us over Zoom from where?
I am in my, as a throwback to early COVID days, I'm in my childhood bedroom in Annandale, Virginia, where after the show opened, my family had come out for the show, so we now came down here to spend some time with my parents.
Well, Virginia is far away from Berkeley, California, or the People's Republic of Berkeley, as it is sometimes known, in which this play, your wonderful comedy, is set. Did you find that the wokeness among the 5-member board, the 5 characters that you wrote so beautifully, was ripe for satire?
I mean, in a sense, I started working on the play initially in 2016. We weren't, at least in such a, I wasn't using the term wokeness in the way we're using it now. And I think it's that way in which, you know, all things sort of begin in California and spread to the rest of the country. So I think things that we were doing and saying that seemed quite normal now, you know, I think taken on a different valence, but it was less about, you know, there was no sense of trying to sort of exaggerate or play up the way anybody is behaving. And it's really about people who are really committed to trying to live in a sort of thoughtful and an intentional way. And then, you know, the way that collides with a situation that makes that difficult for everyone.
Maybe doing things in a new way isn't always good just because it's new. I mean, I get so many things wrong. I get so many things wrong, and I don't know, okay? I believe in human fallibility. Like, we could be getting this wrong.
And that is a difficult situation where your 2 characters respectively have to encounter. Bill, you were born in California as well. You're a Californian, and you spent some time in Northern California too?
I did. I am a Californian. Thank you for using that term. I am.
And when you first read the play, did you recognize Don, the character that you play?
Yes, I did, both as a Californian and as a school administrator and as a veteran of the 60s and 70s. Yeah, it was a mirror to a certain extent in that role.
He's fond of quoting Rumi. Was that a way into the character for you?
I guess it was. I hadn't thought about that. I'm not the greatest Rumi fan myself, but through Dawn, I've reattached to it. Yes, I guess it was, but the way that the characters speak to each other and the way they often don't quite finish, it was the truest key for me of oh, I see where we are and I see who these people are.
And was there a particular line or a scene that was a, to quote a phrase, Eureka moment for you in reading, when you first encountered the play, when you first read it?
I'm not sure there was, but a favorite line of mine, and of course one is always worried about giving things away when we're talking to a television audience, but at one point they solve a problem by solving a play, by setting a play in outer space.
Ah, yes, we're talking about a politically correct Peter Pan production
Yes.
to avoid the Native American references that have fallen out of favor.
Yes.
Last year, we had an 8th grade production of Peter Pan, which I don't know what they were thinking.
We set the production in outer space. That really solved all of
So
the...
then all the kids got to fly.
And setting it in outer space seems to the characters to solve everything. And that was a wonderful moment as I read the play.
Just to pop in for
Yes,
a second,
please.
that's a great example of, I mean, this is so true, I think, so often in writing, that there are many things that if I had put them into the play, that I know from people I interviewed, things in real life that you put in the play would seem over the top and absurd, so you can't put them in the play. But this particular thing was taken from a friend of mine who was a middle school teacher in Berkeley. And they had a bit of an uproar about they solved it by setting it in outer space.
Really?
So,
Jessica, what is Suzanne's take on that particular play interpretation?
Oh, she thought it was wonderful. No, she really did. She was so pleased that no one's feelings were hurt. She's so worried about hurting people's feelings.
Interesting, but she's capable of it.
Devastating people. But, you know, her boundaries are, they're very confused. I'll say that. The idea to set it in outer space, I think she's very insistent on solutions. This utopic idea that we will figure everything out. She's dogged in figuring it all out. Even if someone's, bleeding on the ground, we were gonna figure this out. So the idea that they like Frankenstein this production together, is fabulous for her.
You mentioned an interesting word in relation to the character, and that is that she is confused. But she's not confused at the beginning. It appears to me that she may have erected, as many of the characters have done, a deck of cards. And it's very, very difficult if you pull one
out. Yeah.
I hope you know how much respect I have for you. I really do. For how thoughtfully you're engaging with...
I'm just trying to be responsible, to do my due diligence, okay?
Yeah, right. Of course. Me too.
Sure.
I think she's, as with anything related to children, and I feel like her desperation to be in an environment where children are happy, that motivates everything for her. And as a parent and as somebody who spent a lot of time with kids other than my own, I was a nanny for many years and I run a program that involves children, I do feel this impetus to try to keep everybody happy, which really requires a lot of shifting of boundaries. If you're going to really do that, I mean, you shouldn't keep nobody's going to be happy all the time. So the fact that she's in some way protecting this idealistic, nest is where she gets into a little bit of trouble. I'm giving so much of her failure. She's actually been wildly successul up until this moment, I think.
and very competent, and she's
very
prides herself.
competent, and she's very well read, and she's very and she's very thoughtful about all of these things. Yeah, this is not done in a slapdash or a superficial way. It's serious for her.
Jonathan, you chose to give Suzanne, I think, 5 kids? Is that right? 5 children?
Yes.
You gave,
Yeah.
and you chose to give Dawn none. Why? And how does that color the characters that you wrote?
I think for Suzanne being a mother, and I think the school itself, is an extension of that she, on some level, thinks of herself as the mother of the school, which she helped birth. So that's so much a part of who she is. And I think in contrast for Dawn, in a similar way that all of the children at the school, all of the children who come through the school are his children.
Being a school teacher, a school administrator, is, to use Jonathan's language, is an awesome responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but Don has no kids of his own. So at one moment, late in the play, Suzanne says something about, my child is most important to me, and that's true of everyone in this room. And I always think, I guess she's forgetting that I don't have any kids.
And you have a physical reaction to that. In fact, you have a physical reaction to practically everything everybody says.
So wonderful.
Because you do have this extraordinary background, obviously, as a clown and as a mime. How have you used that vernacular, that language, to inform Dawn, and especially reactions to what people say?
Every storytelling is, I think, first and foremost, nonverbal storytelling. That's where it starts. And then people talk, and then what we say tells other people a lot about us. But the first knowledge is how we look at each other and how we take each other in, because we're mammals, visually. And
Suzanne has these wonderful reactions as well. Sometimes it's just a squeak.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think she's just delighted. Yeah, she mimics the children's behavior, I think, a little bit. Like,
Is that it?
Yeah. I think she makes the kind of sounds a lot in the play that would be appropriate if we were telling a story, like from a book, like, said the bear about the porridge.
Is that Suzanne's first?
Impulse is
First-
to tell it as
yeah.
a story. I'm giving away a lot of this
You are,
stuff,
but it's good to know.
I think everything is basically one step away from going once upon a time.
Well, there's a lot of neurodiversity here.
Oh.
Yeah, we really value it.
Actually, he's not he's not on the spectrum. He's just
I think sometimes I'm asked to play characters who seem like they're not quite present, but in reality they're uber present and formulating a whole set of feelings about what's going on.
Yeah.
Everybody that's reviewed this, and it opened to rave reviews, was talked about just how timely it has been. I mean, the debate about vaccination is just burning up the headlines.
Yeah.
All of you have children, obviously.
Yeah.
Where did you fall on the spectrum of vaccination? And how has the play even influenced how you feel about vaccinations? Why don't we start with you, Bill?
Okay.
You have a son, I believe.
I do. All of the aspects of this play are very triggering for me because our son went to lots of different schools, public school, private progressive school, and we started with one point of view on vaccinations and then came up against, well, that's fine, but your son can't go to this school. And then we shifted and had a nuance. A lot of what come out of the characters' mouths in Eureka Day came through our minds and mouths as our son was growing up. Finally, he got the MMR, Jonathan, a little older than most people do, and it was so that he could go to a certain school.
This is the mumps vaccine. The MMR is the
Mumps, measles, rubella.
Yes.
The measles,
Yeah.
rubella.
Mumps, measles, rubella.
Yes, so it's
that's-
both types of measles
Right.
and mumps, which didn't exist when I was growing up. So I'm an old timer who represents the pre-MMR point of view, where they have mumps next door. Go play with them because we want you to get mumps, and then you'll have it. That came up against, in the 60s, as I understand it, the development of the MMR vaccine, which protects people and populations in a different way. So the question is ongoing over many generations.
How do you interpret it, Jessica, for yourself and for your family or your children when they were small?
Oh, my kids when they were small, like Suzanne, actually, I came from my stepfather, my dad, who I consider my dad. He is a doctor, and and I had a pretty traditional relationship to vaccines because of his influence. I come from a family with several doctors, like Suzanne, and so I was relatively traditional. And I think so on that front, I really would adhere to some of the more conservative characters in the play. And my feeling about school is that I couldn't be a more forceful advocate for public school for everybody. Mm-hmm. I could not believe more in what Suzanne says. If we really had a social justice perspective, we would all go to public school.
Karina, why do you send your child to a private school?
What?
Why do you send your child to a private school?
Because it's the best environment for our son.
No, but just, of course, but just from a social justice perspective, wouldn't the most equitable thing be if we all went to public school?
Yes, probably.
Jonathan, I want to ask you something of a loaded question. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may be appointed as the next head of the Department of Health and Human Services, which will control this. What do you think of his nomination?
You know, it's quite scary stuff if it ends up going forward. This sort of conspiratorial mindset that makes one distrustful of all kind of official information, and at the same time very receptive to any information that presents itself as like, here's the real truth they're keeping from you, which
Right.
I think can take you down some very strange rabbit holes.
Well, that's the word that you just mentioned. Again, whoever thought that it would be loaded? Truth. And whoever thought
Yeah,
that there might
yeah.
not be, that it might be subjective
Yeah.
at all. And of course, your play deals with that. Because of the nature of the play, it would be easy to dip into too much into satire, go a little bit too far. You had Anna Shapiro, the director, to guide you in that way. What was instructive in terms of her direction to you, or your conversations with her, and likewise her conversations with the two of you? But first, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from the first conversation I had with Anna, and I was so excited by the way she responded to the play and wanted to, I think we both really wanted to lean into the humanity of all these people and the good faith and of their intent. And I think it would be very easy to to play up the satire and to kind of heighten everybody and make them sort of caricatures. And there's a lot of I think if you do that with the play, you can get even more laughs than the wonderful laughs the actors are getting now in the first half of the play by doing that, because it's easy to make people laugh at things if you're making fun of them. But if you do that, then it's much harder for the audience to kind of come along for the journey when the play goes into much more serious territory in the second half. And so I think it was very important to us to take these people seriously.
That pivot from humor to a more somber tone comes with Suzanne. Eli, I think, maybe first, and then Suzanne, but mm-hmm. Suzanne's monologue really makes the play turn into a different way.
He passed away when I was pregnant with my first, so he never got to meet her. He would have loved her. Juniper was this absolutely precious, perfect little baby. She was so full of smiles and pure joy.
How did you work with Anna Shapiro on that, Jessica?
Well, and that's also a tricky one, not to give away that piece of the play,
Right.
but there is a turn in the play where you realize maybe why Suzanne has organized her life in this manner. And I had a really hard time figuring out how to make that organic. And I feel that we did find it, the three of us, Jonathan and Anna and I, and actually Amber Gray, who plays Karina. She's a wonderful scene partner, and the way she takes in the information I share is really, I think, transformative to the whole scene. But you reach a point as an actor, which Bill has experienced, where you've played a lot of scenarios at least once, in different manifestations of what characters have gone through. Characters, going through breakdowns of their own, characters experiencing all of the ravages of life. So you understand how to access a certain kind of emotional life, but then you're trying to figure out how to access it in a way that is the best storytelling for this play and for this person. And that's the thing. And I think sometimes as an actor, what you have to do, and I'd be curious if what you would feel for yourself, you have to visit the rooms that you've been to before that surround that scenario, because that what happened to Suzanne is something that's happened to other characters that I have played. And so you're like, oh, but this isn't the room of this character. This character experiences this thing in a different way and isn't as sort of engaging with her emotions the way that person did. So let me stay in that room for a minute and then exit. And I once listened to a brilliant interview with Penelope Cruz, and she was talking about she works with an acting coach always before she starts to film, and she goes through all of those things with the coach. Like she'll go into a session with the coach where she's playing out a similar scene to the one I play out, and she does it in the most embarrassing way, maybe crying through the whole thing or very remote through, and she gets it all these things that I'm talking about. She just spends hours with this coach so she doesn't have to do that in front of the company of people watching. Not quite the scenario that one would have in the theater, but at our age and at our experience, you don't really care. You're like, well, this is part of my process. So today I'm going to be crying a lot, and tomorrow I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stand here and try to organize the thoughts. So it's really trial and error until you feel like, oh, this is the room that she lives in.
Bill, what rooms might you have visited?
That's so
on
good.
Your way
Thank you for using
to Dawn?
This is a bit of acting craft terminology that I've never used, and it's feeling so useful. I will say this, Patrick, on stage the last several days, I've thought a lot about this, that an actor should be careful talking about playwriting with a playwright present, but to write a viable play, you have to have a good first scene. And maybe it's a big dramatic scene, or maybe it's very diurnal, but it tells the audience what it needs to know in scene one. And that's not easy, but if you accomplish that and then write scene 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are essential, comfortable rehashes of scene one, the play does not go anywhere. And what struck me on stage just the last few nights is when we have 7 scenes in Eureka Day. When we get to scene 5, we are so far from scene 1.
Yes.
It has really been a journey. It's been a lot of rooms
Wow.
that we've traveled through by the time we're there, and we still have 2 more to go. The journey of the play is it's a 95-minute theater experience, but it is a lot of traveling.
I couldn't possibly end this conversation without bringing up the scene, I don't know if it's scene 3 or scene 4,
scene 3.
in which there is a live stream meeting in which the parents who've been invited to log on to this live stream meeting can now make comments. And we see these comments devolve into insult, injury.
Are they the only answer? Are they the best answer? For me, that I'm not so sure about.
You just mean that it's one thing if you're...
Looking at that unchecked id in the comments against the wall, do you think that the 5-member board might be better off if they were a little bit more honest and as blunt as the parents are in that scene?
Well, and I'll run this by Jonathan. You used the word id. In some ways, the characters are involved in finding harmony and a self-congratulatory way of consensusizing that keeps a lid on what may be beneath that and the id that may be within our community. But it comes forth in scene 3. And if you spend your life loving laughter in a theater, I love my family, I love being an American citizen, and I love being in a theater where there's huge laughter. Well, this is a good gig for that one, because somehow Jonathan brings us through scene 1, 2, and by the time we're in scene 3, there is deep, rich laughter in the theater, and it's a joy.
Do you find that this boil, what you just described, there's something salutary in lancing that and pushing through that pretense of political, polite conversation?
I do. I think we are all victims of the kind of brutality people can have if a screen is protecting them from real human interaction. I think we've all felt that and all spent time in a kind of fury or shock that people can be that way with that protection. So the question of whether we would actually score the same way if we were in the room, I just wanted to comment on that, is no, we would never score the same way, and it would be more of a Virginia Woolf to, or it'd be something else. If we were to just do that, and I don't know that we would have a scenario where 5 people who weren't actually sleeping together or sleeping in the same bed would be able to be that vicious to each other. Do you know, there's something about, so what the screen does for you is it makes you feel like you're intimate with somebody, and you can really just go at it.
We're all walking on eggshells.
We are.
In terms of what can be said, what cannot be said. And the election has thrown everybody into a tizzy. Just thrown everybody off. So is it better that we be as honest as we possibly can?
I would just
please.
push back on that a little, and the voice of, in defense of not being totally honest with people all the time, in service of kind of a functioning society. Because I think part of the point of that scene is that the people in the room are trying to have a good faith conversation, even if it gets difficult at times, and that the kind of vitriol that people unleash each other online, even those people would never do that if they were in the room with the other people. There's something about the dehumanizing nature of communicating, with a screen that sort of allows us to be vicious in a way we wouldn't be. And I mean, generally, I think that's bad for, as we have all seen over the past, 10 or 15 years that we've been living more and more of our lives on screen. It doesn't feel like that has been very beneficial to society.
What agents often say to their actor clients is, write the late night email, but don't send it.
That's probably very wise advice. In fact, be careful about what you ever put down on writing, period. It's hard not to see this play and these 5 characters in this room as a microcosm of the nation as a whole. I certainly saw that analogy. I don't know if that was intended, Jonathan. But you just mentioned, Bill, that you love this country.
I do.
And if you look at this play, does it make it more difficult to love this country or easier to love this country?
This is such an interesting time because I'm an old timer. I love this. I love my people. I love the dirt of this country. I'm not sure entirely that I can live here now going forward. My wife and I will see over the next years. So it's like the play itself. It's full of huge, possibly unanswerable questions.
But
Jessica?
it's a great question also because Jonathan starts, like my character, I touch people all the time. This play starts and ends with Rumi, and I think there's that magnificent quote of his, which is, I'm paraphrasing poorly, but it's basically, the wound is where the light gets in. And I think that's something we should reflect on, that if we didn't go through this. So I do think, not to sound too crunchy, I do think the wound is where the light gets in.
We have to wrap up, but in the process of writing this play, given the polarization that we're witnessing now, does this make you hopeful that we can ever communicate, reach a place where we do look for the common good while taking care of the minority?
I think it's an illusion to hold on the idea that we have some place that we're trying to get to, and then we'll get to that place and we will just stay there for, in perpetuity once we have achieved a certain kind of enlightenment as a society. I think it's always a struggle, and it's always a process of sort of trying to move towards the thing that you want to become as a society, as a country, and it feels like maybe now at this moment we're a bit farther away from that than much farther away from that than we were, not that long ago. But I think you sort of have no choice but to keep trying to move in that direction.
Well, as we move toward a more perfect union, and we always keep going, it's nice to have plays like yours and actors like you to help find the light in the wound, as you just put it, Jessica. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. We're taking a short break. When we return, I'm joined by a panel of experts to discuss why Wicked, both the stage musical and its electrifying film adaptation, has so captured the public's imagination and what it may signal for the future of the American musical. We're back. I'm now joined by Matt Koplik of the podcast Broadway Breakdown, actor and content creator Kaisha Huguley, and actor Aaron Albano, who recently ended his run in Aladdin and who joined the cast of Wicked on Broadway in 2010. Welcome to you all to talk about Wicked. Perhaps you've heard of it?
Yes, I believe that I have.
It's a bit niche, but sure.
A little-known film.
For every blockbuster like The Sound of Music, there is a flop and bomb like A Chorus Line. For every Oscar Best Winner, Chicago, there is a monumental blunder like Cats. What do you think the director John Chu, who directed Wicked, fundamentally understood about transferring a stage musical to the film genre that has made Wicked such a phenomenal success? Matt, let's start with you.
Well, I think what he understood is the primary focus of a musical is the music.
Yeah.
Making sure those numbers sounded good, that they looked good, that's what carries any musical, and I think Wicked in particular. I mean, that score, I don't care who you think you are, that score slaps very hard. And so you take care of those songs. And he did. I think he cast actors who carried over the musical capabilities and then also just filmed it in a way that made it very exciting and very theatrical. Film tends to be a realistic medium in general, so if you're doing a musical, you have to heighten things so the songs can make emotional and storytelling sense. Kaisha?
Yeah. To add to that, I think that John really understood what kind of fan base was built in with this musical, because people have loved Wicked for so long. And I think people came in with a lot of different expectations. I will never forget watching it for the first time and my heart was racing. I was like, y'all better do this right. And so I think he really understood just how much people were looking forward to this and that their expectations were going to be high and that we were looking for the magic that we so love about Broadway.
I think there's also an aspect where I've been saying this about the movie a lot is the movie approaches Wicked more as a revival than it does an adaptation, in that it honors what came before. It honors the show that exists and has existed for 21 years, but it also allows itself to explore and expand on the lore, so that in that way it's not only taking care of the fan base it currently has, but is able to bring in new people. And I think some of the most successful revivals are the ones that both honor the source material as well as bring something new to it.
You brought baggage into it because you were in
Yes,
it.
extremely so.
So were you a little bit sensitive about when you went to go see it, having been in it?
I went in the first weekend, and then again, a big alumni group went to see it for sort of the first weekend as well. And we were all very pleased and very happy about it. And that's, I think, when you can take care of your own as well as the masses, I think that's when you're really gonna hit well. That's the sweet spot.
Props, of course, to Gregory Maguire, who wrote the book on which Wicked is based. And he approached it because he wanted to study evil in more multidimensionality than it had been presented with stock characters in fairy tales and in children's books. Which of the two do you think is more faithful to the Gregory Maguire book?
The musical is truly an adaptation, I would say, and sort of boils down core themes of the book rather than stays faithful to it, I would say. I think the movie probably has more elements of the book just because it has the benefit of time, just by being part one being act one. They're like, so we have more space to throw in some details.
I think
it's longer, obviously, and there is a part two that's coming up. Kaisha, the film has been in the works for a long time, and Mark Platt said he was never ready to make the movie. Why do you suppose it has hit so strongly at this moment in American culture?
Well, I think that Wicked is a really universal story that a lot of people can relate to and find themselves within this world of Oz. Ultimately, I think Wicked also just hits on a lot of themes that are very relevant to today and to many, many years past. You know, Wicked is about racism. It really is. And to have Cynthia Erivo in this role, defying gravity and being this powerful woman who is finding her voice and defying the odds of what it means to be a leader and to speak out and to stand up for others and fight for justice. I mean, it's a really, this is the time for that. It has always been the time, but this is really the time for that.
What hits you most emotionally and most personally about the movie?
Oh, I'm gonna start crying.
Start crying.
The Ozdust ballroom scene gets me every single time. I've seen the film 4 times now. And twins. And every time that scene happens, you know, it just is so personal to me. I think, you know, when I was in 8th grade, I wore some capri pants to school, and it was raining. And so I come into school a little bit late, and all of the kids in the cafeteria laugh at me for having on those pants on that particular day. And I felt so embarrassed that, like, I wasn't cool and that I had on, like, a weird outfit, and, like, I was just, like, completely traumatized from that experience. So to see Elphaba walk into this room where everyone is pointing and laughing at her and saying that she looks so weird and that, you know, her hat, her dress, all the things, it really triggered that memory for me. I was quite literally sobbing because to see all it took was one act of kindness for that room to turn around and all of a sudden they're friends with her. I was like, wait, I was really just talking about her and then everything's fine now. But like that just hit me so deeply.
I remember that moment especially because we have the benefit of film, the benefit of taking the time and taking the moments. In the show, she just enters and everyone starts laughing and the music cuts out. Because we're in this new space and in this new medium, we get to watch her walk in, have that moment of hope, have that moment of she has dressed up, she's getting ready, she's like, I'm gonna walk into this space and everyone's gonna love me finally. And as we watch her walk, and you start to see like 1 or 2 people walk out and look at her funny, but the room hasn't taken her in yet. And I think it's that letdown that really is so moving, that then spirals you into the acceptance, into the dance, into the duet, that turns the whole movie around, frankly.
Matt, what do you think the movie has hit so powerfully at this moment, the timing of it?
I think part of it is what it has to say about our culture en masse, of like how easily swayed people can be, about isolation, about friendship, about showing up for people, about the power of just showing up for someone. And then also, I think every element of human experience is shown, honestly, within Act 1 of Wicked, which we're seeing right now. But I remember Cynthia talked about in an interview how her Elphaba doesn't show up angry and bitter. It's just sort of, it's what she's always known. So she's pretty at peace with it. And as Aaron was saying, when she shows up to the Ozdust Ballroom, you see the hope she has sort of for the first time. And then when she realizes what's happened to her, she doesn't immediately go to sadness so much as she kind of goes to, yeah, this is sort of what I should have known. This is what it was going to be all along. And she doesn't really break until she's shown the act of kindness. And you see how many walls this young woman has built for herself. And I think everyone can relate to having to build walls to just be out in the world and experience the world without as much trauma as you can handle. And, you know, sometimes something really awful can break you, but sometimes something really lovely can break you in the same way. And hopefully that breaking can allow you to heal and become stronger after the fact. And that's the arc we have for Elphaba in this first act of the movie.
John Chu had previously directed In the Heights, which was a bomb, financially at least. Also Step Up to The Streets, which was very successful, a Justin Bieber concert film, and also Crazy Rich Asians,
yeah.
which he is turning into a Broadway musical. Which do you think got him the job?
I think Crazy Rich Asians probably got him the job. I know that within the Heights, that was the movie that Schwartz and Holtzman watched and then asked Lin-Manuel Miranda sort of like what that process was like. But I think, that movie was critically successful. I have my qualms with it, but that's not what this episode's about. But I think Crazy Rich Asians being commercially and critically successful, ultimately that's what gets you any job, right?
Chu was initially hesitant to cast Ariana Grande because, again, she was so larger than life in a way in terms of her image. How successful was she in terms of being able to use the best parts of that image and not what he was worried about in that chemistry between the two of them?
Yeah, I would say that she was very successful. I have never been an Ariana Grande fan in the sense that, not that I don't like her or anything, I just have never followed her career. Like when I've seen her pop up in things, I'm like, oh, it's Ariana Grande, but she's not been someone that I follow, and she is now someone that I follow because she won me over. When a pop star, someone at this level gets cast in a movie musical, you have your, qualms about it. You're like, how is this gonna go? And she completely blew my expectations out of the water. I think Ariana is really naturally gifted in comedy. And Glinda, of course, is very comedic. And so I think she really nailed that. And for me personally, I did not see Ariana in the film. I saw her take on Glinda. So I think she was very successful.
You brought up an interesting point, which of course is that she could do the humor. And Chu actually landed on Erivo and Grande because they could. That was the tipping point for him in terms of it. Grande also, Stephen Schwartz had wanted to make Popular, of course, which I think is probably the most popular song of the score, into a more contemporary, modernized hip-hop rendition. In fact, Grande said, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's one of us. She's a huge fan of the show, and she's like, you're not going to do that. There's that also famous story that this One Short Day, they were going to have...
the last line in the script was going to be a throwback to The Wizard of Oz, which was...
I think Who Rang That Bell.
Who Rang That Bell,
Right.
yeah. Who Rang That Bell, and she read it immediately and called John Chu immediately and was like, we have to change this.
This has to be The Wizard Will See You Now. She's like,
Yes.
the fans will riot.
And would have.
We absolutely would have.
The wizard will see you now.
I would say she, arguably, while John Chu is wonderful and amazing and a brilliant director for this movie and for our time, I think she was the one who really took care of the material.
Yeah.
She was the one who really took care of the fans, took care of the source material, because she is one of us.
Yeah.
What did you think of the cameo that Christian Chenoweth and Idina Menzel actually make in the film, in the Wizomania section?
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I think if there's any place for cameos, it would have been in that number. So I was fine.
Same.
It's fine. I do really enjoy the film. I do think it is a little long. There's no scene that I would cut. It's more that like every scene I would like suck out about 20 seconds of air and just, I think that would shave off 15 minutes and make it just a little smoother, tighter, and make certain things like Oz Dust Ballroom land even harder when you hold space for that kind of moment. So I watched it and I was glad to see them. I am not immune to fangirling, so when Idina let out her battle cry in there, I fully fell out of my chair. Even if it wasn't necessary, I don't care. Just like my guttural self went, aha! And on a second viewing, I was like, I love this moment for them.
Yeah, I also am really happy to see that, Kristen went over to Ariana and then Idina went over to Cynthia. I thought that was a nice nod of like, I'm kind of like passing the torch to you. I often view this film, now that I've seen it so much, I see it from my perspective. Like, 3 hours is not a long time for me on a musical, my first Broadway musical, the musical that I love. But for someone who does not normally watch musicals or who is not a part of this world, I often wonder, like, how does this hit for them? And like, is this too long? Is it too much singing? And from the few people who I've talked to, because most of my people are in this world who are not technically in the world, they've said things like, oh no, actually, like, it wasn't too long for me, which is shocking because normally movies that are at this length, people would be like, I'm tired, I'm ready to go, this could have been tighter. And at least the small fraction of people that I've spoken with have been like, I'm cool with the runtime. And I'm like, I'm ultimately so grateful that this wasn't 2 parts. I was kind of like a little conflicted about that. I'm like, give it to us all at the same time. I was like, give it to me. But now I'm like so glad that it's actually in 2 parts because otherwise it would have been over in November. And now I have a whole year.
Well, and I think sorry, go for it.
Well, it's that because I remember when the movie was announced, when the 2 movies were announced, the 2-parter were announced, I think everybody was like, why?
Right.
And then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, no. Defying Gravity is too good.
to end it on.
The act break
and
is
do you
too
think
good.
Do you think it made a big difference that they sang live? Ariana Grande and...
Yeah, well, I think there was a lot more live vocals than just the 2 of them. And I do wonder in the end, like, how much of it is live and how much of it is sweetened in post, which I truly don't care about just because the overall quality is so good. I think live singing allows for impulsive and organic performances. The trick is you have something like Les Mis where a director is like, I don't want it to sound pretty ever. I'm like, it's Les Mis, it's wall-to-wall music. That means it's wall-to-wall, not pretty music if you're doing it that way. And Wicked, they want it to be organic, but they're also like, no, it has to carry through musically. And it gives you the best of both worlds. You get organic performances with incredible vocals, and it's what you get on stage every night, and it's what makes the movie work as well.
Yeah, I think that if Cynthia Erivo wins the Oscar, it'll be because of Defying Gravity singing live while she's flying through the air.
If
It's
she
quite
wins
a
the
moment.
Oscars for telling Jonathan Bailey to get stuffed.
I'm off for some more trampling. May we offer you a ride?
No thanks. Get stuffed.
Wow. Fellas, but we have just been spurned by a girl.
That is my Oscar.
Speaking of Jonathan Bailey, what did you think of his performance?
No notes.
No notes.
No comment. Then let's go to.
I don't want to. Yeah, I want to stay professional. I want people to think not super less of me by anything I say. I'm a grown man. I need to stop it.
Honestly, I love him. I'm obsessed with him in the most healthy way. When you think of Fiyero and you think of this character that we all just fall in love with, it's like, who is this person going to be? And when he was cast, I was like, oh, we're really going to fall in love. We've fallen in love with him over the course of his career in so many different things. And so to see him in this role has been like, So I am so excited to see what happens in For Good in the second part of the movie, because I think this is where we really see Fiyero's transformation in more ways than one.
No, my favorite moment of his was the way the movie shifted when he meets Elphaba. When he meets Elphaba in the show, he's just riding on like a carriage, on like a rickshaw.
It's a pedicab, really.
Yeah, it's truly a pedicab. And then they run in and they meet in front of the entire school. Whereas under the cover of night, they're able to develop this sort of chemistry right from the beginning with no eyes on them.
Right.
The moment when she launches into her speech that she gives at the beginning of the show, I remember the first time I saw the show, when she started that, I was like, oh.
Here she comes.
Yeah.
You're green. I am. Fine. Let's get this over with. No, I am not seasick. No, I did not eat grass as a child. And yes, I've always been green.
I think there's a reason why Wicked, the story itself, really begins when they're at school, because college is a pinnacle point for a lot of people's lives where they really figure out who are they really. And with all these characters, there's the exterior that they've made for themselves to present to the world. Elphaba's tough exterior, Glinda's popular exterior, Fiero's charming exterior, and then with a little bit of challenge, what comes, what's underneath there? How does that morph in some ways? What I loved about what Ariana did with her actual performance, because I agree, she is the keeper of the keys of the show for that movie, and it's what made it so faithful in the way that it was. What she understood, I think a lot of comedic performances at their best understand is you're not commenting on your character and you're not trying to play to the audience. Your character is ridiculous, but they take themselves so seriously.
Yes. Some critics, Kaisha, have thought that Christopher Scott's choreography was underrated what did you think of the choreography?
Listen, I had a great time learning hello,
Yeah.
like I can actually do it. I actually think that it was really wonderful and dynamic. Just thinking about those aerial shots when you kind of look down and you see the ensemble of dancers dancing.
I think maybe critics said that at the time by watching it, but the response the movie has had, I would say, like outside of the vocals, that's like the number one thing people have been responding to. You go online, on social media, people have been.
Favorite number?
For me, it's What Is This Feeling?
Yeah,
I have
Loathing.
absolutely no notes about it.
Yeah.
What is this feeling? What is
Loathing,
this feeling?
same number.
I like Dancing Through Life.
That's also
I
great.
love it too. I mean, it's great.
Dancing through life, swaying and sweeping, and always keeping cool.
Do you think that the music of Wicked is now as pervasive as the music of Rent was at the time that it became such a huge success, and as pervasive as Hamilton became, where kids would know every rap song from the CD or album or record?
I think so, yeah.
sure.
You think it is?
I think
Yeah.
I think Popular and Defying Gravity have definitely made it into the mainframe of the culture. I felt like they did when the show first came out, and we talk about how it's sort of repopular now, but Wicked was everywhere for so long. It was in TV shows and it was in movies. Like there was like 20 different sitcoms you can pick from 2003 to 2010 that had like a Wicked reference.
Yeah.
Or someone singing Defying Gravity or For Good or Popular. And I do think a lot of those songs have made their way in. I'm hoping that the movie's now letting other songs make their way in. Like now Dancing Through Life is becoming a main song, as is What Is This Feeling? Flowers.
Literally. And what's so wild to me about What Is This Feeling is that when from the Broadway musical, that was never my favorite song. Like I would listen to it, but like not gonna lie, I would skip it sometimes.
Yeah.
But now I can't skip it. It is not a skip for me at all. Like I just love that song so much.
We have to wrap up, but I want to end our conversation with talking about the legacy of the film, although we know that the second part has yet to come. But what do you think it means to Broadway and the American musical theater?
I mean, I want to say that the movie is definitely doing what all good movie musicals do. It drives the interest of the field that it came from, if that makes sense. It's, I think, when Chicago happened, it drove interest into the musical, into the revival.
You know, I think that one of the reasons why Wicked is so successful is because of its source material. The Wizard of Oz is one of the most iconic films of all time. And so because I think we all love an origin story, we love to know the behind the scenes, that is in part one of the things that makes Wicked so successful. Wicked musical was my first Broadway musical. And so seeing this musical become a movie musical has been like one of the greatest joys of my adult life, if I'm just being honest. It has been so special. And I love that it is creating access to people who don't have access to Broadway.
Yeah.
Because when I think about my personal experience, Wicked was my first Broadway musical at the age of 14. I didn't see another musical until I was in my 20s. And so then, of course, I moved to New York. I see musicals all the time, but there are a lot of people around the world who don't have access to New York or to a national tour or to the theater space in general. So I love that this movie is creating access and helping them to become interested so that they can access this industry. I think that it has a tremendous cultural impact in so many different ways, and I can't wait for part 2.
Yeah. I do want to say one last thing. I hope that more of the legacy of Wicked the movie does for movie musicals more than Broadway, of teaching Hollywood, if you're doing a musical, go for broke and don't be embarrassed.
Be proud of being embarrassed.
Yes.
Because we were saying earlier, as you said, so many flops. We've been sort of in a valley with movie musicals lately, whether they've had good reviews or not. Like box office wise, they've all kind of flopped.
And it's also like, don't hide the music in
Yeah.
the movie musical. Let people know that it, because some of the trailers, it's like no music, and it's like, wait, and then people come to the theater and they're singing.
Especially with something like Wicked or even In the Heights, like where the music is so good, like that is your secret weapon. Go, really go hard. Cast people who can sing it. Don't be ashamed of the numbers, and really promote the crap out of it, because that is what people are responding to with Wicked more than anything. It has everything. It has emotion, it has grandeur, it has The Wizard of Oz, it has all of these things, but ultimately it is the songs that we keep coming back to, and that is what a musical lives or dies off of.
And that's certainly true of Wicked, the film musical. And I'm sure that they're probably keeping the slippers under lock and key if in 50 years they'll bring $150 million at an auction.
And if 50 years with inflation, it's going to be like $450 million. Come on.
Speaking of inflation, The Sound of Music is still the highest gross, adjusted for inflation, is still the highest grossing movie of all time.
Movie musical, I think.
Movie musical, $1.4 billion.
Yeah. Gone with the Wind, I think, is like $2 billion.
Right. So we'll see if Wicked, the film musical, eventually beats it. It's now at about $700 million in worldwide grosses.
Yeah. Wow.
But I thank you so much for making it come so brilliantly alive, Matt, Kaisha, and Aaron.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you more fascinating conversations with creative talents who live and work only to astonish us. Be sure to download the new CUNY TV app to watch all of our exciting and provocative shows, also available on YouTube. I'm Patrick Pacheco.